They called him the Brain, not because he was smart, plenty of gangsters were smart, but because he saw what others couldn't. That crime wasn't about violence, it was about business. He didn't need guns, he had something more dangerous: intelligence, patience, and a $100,000 bankroll in his pocket at all times. He fixed the World Series. He invented modern organized crime. And in the end, a poker game killed him faster than any bullet ever could. January 17th, 1882. Manhattan, New York City. In an affluent Jewish household on the Upper East Side, Arnold Rothstein was born to Abraham and Esther Rothstein, a family so respected in their community that Arnold's father earned the nickname Abe the Just. Abraham Rothstein was a successful businessman, a pillar of the Jewish community, and a man of unshakable moral character. His older son, Harry, followed in his father's footsteps, studying to become a rabbi, attending synagogue, living a righteous life. But Arnold was different. From childhood, Arnold Rothstein harbored a deep envy of his older brother Harry. His father doted on Harry. His mother praised Harry. Everyone loved Harry. And Arnold was invisible. His father believed young Rothstein craved to be the center of attention and became frustrated when he was not. So Arnold found a way to get attention. He became a gambler. By age 10, Arnold was playing craps in alleyways. By 12, he was hustling card games in neighborhood bars. By 16, he'd lost all interest in school and dropped out. His father was horrified. His mother wept. But Arnold didn't care. He'd found his calling. In 1921, when asked how he became a gambler, Rothstein said, "I always gambled. I can't remember when I didn't. Maybe I gambled just to show my father he couldn't tell me what to do. But I don't think so. I think I gambled because I loved the excitement." But it wasn't just excitement. It was power. Every time Arnold won a bet, every time he took someone's money, every time he calculated odds and came out ahead, he was proving something. He was proving he was smarter than everyone else. By age 20, Rothstein was running his own dice games and earning $10,000 a week, a fortune in 1902. He became known throughout New York as a gambler with an almost supernatural ability to win. But those who knew him understood the truth. Rothstein didn't rely on luck. He relied on mathematics, psychology, and fixing the game. In 1909, at 27 years old, Rothstein married Carolyn Green, an actress and showgirl. His family was scandalized, a respectable Jewish boy marrying a shiksa. But Rothstein didn't care about respectability. He cared about winning. And in 1914, he made the move that would change his life forever. He opened his own casino in Midtown Manhattan. By age 30, Arnold Rothstein was a millionaire. By the 1910s, Arnold Rothstein was no longer just a gambler. He was a businessman. He owned multiple casinos. He ran bookmaking operations across New York. He fixed horse races, boxing matches, and elections. And he did it all with one simple philosophy: look out for number one. Rothstein didn't trust anyone. He didn't have partners. He had employees. He didn't have friends. He had assets. And he never ever gambled unless he knew the outcome. His attorney, William Fallon, memorably described him: Arnold Rothstein is a man who waits in doorways, a mouse waiting in the doorway for his cheese. But that mouse, he ate better than the cats. Rothstein earned the nickname the Big Bankroll because he always carried a massive stack of 100 bills, sometimes $50,000 or more, wrapped in rubber bands. He wanted to be able to finance any deal on the spot. If you needed money, Rothstein had it. But it came with extreme interest rates. He became a loan shark, lending money to gamblers, criminals, and businessmen. Anyone who needed cash fast and couldn't get it legitimately. He charged 20%, 30%, sometimes 50% interest. And if you didn't pay, you disappeared. But Rothstein's real genius wasn't gambling or loan sharking. It was connections. He cultivated relationships with politicians, judges, police commissioners, and district attorneys, all paid off through Tammany Hall, the corrupt political machine that controlled New York City. If you needed a case fixed, a witness silenced, or a competitor eliminated, Rothstein could make it happen. And in the late 1910s, Rothstein spotted the opportunity of a lifetime. Professional baseball was vulnerable. In 1919, the Chicago White Sox were the best team in baseball. They had the pitching, the hitting, the defense. They were heavily favored to beat the underdog Cincinnati Reds in the World Series. But there was one problem. The players hated their owner. Charles Comiskey, the White Sox owner, was notoriously cheap. He paid his players average salaries while making millions himself. Resentment festered in the clubhouse. And in September 1919, a small-time gambler named Joseph "Sport" Sullivan approached White Sox first baseman Arnold "Chick" Scandal with a proposition. "What if I paid you and some teammates $100,000 to throw the World Series?" Scandal recruited 7 other players. Pitchers Eddie Saccott and Lefty Williams. Outfielders Shoeless Joe Jackson and Oscar "Happy" Felsch. Shortstop Charles "Swede" Risberg. Third baseman George "Buck" Weaver. And utility infielder Fred McMullen. 8 players, $100,000, one fixed World Series. But there was a problem. Sullivan didn't have $100,000. So he approached another gambler, a former White Sox player named Sleepy Bill Burns. And Burns approached the only man in America with that kind of cash, Arnold Rothstein. Rothstein met with Burns and Sullivan and listened to their plan. At first, he was skeptical. Fixing a World Series? Too risky? Too public? Too many people involved? But then he did the math. If the White Sox were 3-1 favorites and he bet big on the Reds, he could make millions. Rothstein agreed to finance the fix, but only through intermediaries. He gave money to his associate, Abe Attell, a former boxing champion who had connections in the gambling world. Attell would handle the payments to the players. Rothstein would stay in the shadows. The 1919 World Series began on October 1st, 1919. Game 1. The White Sox lost 9-1. Eddie Saccott, their ace pitcher, hit the first Cincinnati batter with a pitch, the signal to gamblers that the fix was in. Game 2. The White Sox lost 4-2. Lefty Williams pitched poorly on purpose. Game 3. The White Sox won 3-0. Rookie pitcher Dickie Kerr, who wasn't in on the fix, threw a shutout. The players started panicking. They weren't getting paid. Game 4. The White Sox lost 2-0. Saccott made obvious fielding errors. Game 5. The White Sox lost 5-0. The players had finally received partial payment and threw the game. Game 6. The White Sox won 5-4. Dickie Kerr again. Game 7. The White Sox lost 4-1. Game 8. The White Sox lost 10-5. The Cincinnati Reds won the World Series. And Arnold Rothstein? Most believe that Rothstein placed as much as $270,000 in bets on the Cincinnati Reds to win the World Series that year. He made a fortune. But rumors started circulating. Sports writers noticed suspect plays. Gamblers whispered. And in September 1920, a grand jury investigation was launched. 8 Chicago White Sox players, Eddie Saccott, Oscar "Happy" Felsch, Arnold "Chick" Scandal, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Fred McMullen, Charles "Swede" Risberg, George "Buck" Weaver, and Charles "Lefty" Williams were indicted on several counts of conspiracy to defraud. The most explosive testimony began when Burns admitted that members of the White Sox had intentionally fixed the 1919 series. Burns mentioned the involvement of organized crime figure Arnold Rothstein, among others. Arnold Rothstein was summoned to testify. He arrived in a tailored suit, calm and confident. When asked about his involvement, he shifted the blame to his former associate, Abe Attell. Rothstein was eventually exonerated of any wrongdoing. All the records and minutes of the grand jury disappeared. So too did the signed confessions of Saccott, Williams, and Jackson. The state's case collapsed. On August 2, 1921, all 8 players were acquitted. But Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the newly named first commissioner of Major League Baseball, permanently banned all 8 White Sox players from playing or participating as coaches in MLB. Arnold Rothstein walked free. The brain had fixed the World Series and gotten away with it. In September 1921, Rothstein announced to the world that he was through with gambling. This was an attempt to regain the anonymity he had lost because of his ties to the Black Sox Scandal. But it was a lie. Rothstein never stopped gambling. He just got better at hiding it. In 1920, the U.S. government passed the 18th Amendment, banning the sale, production, and transportation of alcohol. Prohibition. Most people saw prohibition as a moral crusade. Arnold Rothstein saw it as the greatest business opportunity in American history. Rothstein was widely reputed to have organized corruption in professional athletics, and he was also a mentor of future crime bosses, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Bugsy Siegel, and numerous others. While other gangsters were hijacking liquor trucks and fighting turf wars, Rothstein was organizing. He partnered with smugglers in Canada and Europe. He bribed customs officials. He bought politicians. He turned bootlegging into a nationwide distribution network. And he mentored the next generation of mobsters. Meyer Lansky once admitted of his criminal associate. Rothstein had the most remarkable brain. He understood business instinctively, and I'm sure that if he had been a legitimate financier, he would have been just as rich. Rothstein taught Lucky Luciano how to dress in expensive suits. He taught Meyer Lansky how to launder money. He taught Frank Costello how to corrupt politicians. He taught Bugsy Siegel how to stay calm under pressure. He was the professor, and they were his students. Rothstein also expanded into stuff trafficking. He saw that powder and dope were even more profitable than alcohol. He established smuggling routes from Europe and Asia into New York. By the mid-1920s, Rothstein controlled the largest narcotics distribution network in America. But Rothstein's success came with a price: attention. Federal investigators were watching him. Rival gangsters wanted his territory. And his gambling addiction, the thing that made him famous, was about to destroy him. By 1928, Arnold Rothstein was running low on funds. His narcotics operations were being investigated. His bootlegging empire was crumbling as other gangs muscled in. And worst of all, he was gambling recklessly. On September 8, 1928, Rothstein was invited to a high-stakes poker game at the Congress Apartments at 161 West 54th Street. The game was organized by George "Hump" McManus, a mobbed-up gambler. But what Rothstein didn't know, the game was fixed. The poker game was fixed by a gambler, Titanic Thompson, real name Alvin Clarence Thomas, and his associate, Nate Raymond. Titanic Thompson was a legendary conman and card shark who specialized in setting up elaborate scams. He'd rigged the deck, stacked the odds, and invited Rothstein specifically to take him down. The game lasted 3 days. Rothstein lost hand after hand. By the time it was over, Rothstein owed $320,000, equivalent to $5.9 million in 2024. Due to some complicated side bets, by the end Rothstein owed $319,000 to Raymond, much of which Raymond was due by secret agreement to pass on to Thompson. $30,000 to Thompson, and approximately $200,000 to the other gamblers present. But Rothstein refused to pay. He claimed the game was fixed and refused to pay, provoking his murder. The irony. Arnold Rothstein, the man who'd made millions fixing games, was refusing to pay because someone had fixed a game against him. McManus owed Rothstein $51,000 from a previous debt. Rothstein stalled for time, saying that he would not be able to pay until after the elections of November 1928, when he expected to win $550,000 for successfully backing Herbert Hoover for president and Franklin D. Roosevelt for governor. But the other gamblers didn't want to wait. They wanted their money. And if Rothstein wouldn't pay, they'd make an example of him. November 4th, 1928. 10:15 p.m. Arnold Rothstein was sitting at Lindy's restaurant on Broadway, having dinner with associates. The phone rang. Someone asked to speak with him. Rothstein took the call. He returned moments later, handed his pearl-handled pistol to his associate James Meehan, and said he'd be back shortly. Then he walked out into the night. He headed to the Park Central Hotel at 7th Avenue and 55th Street, room 349. George McManus had called him for a meeting. What happened next is a mystery. Rothstein was found mortally wounded at the Park Central service entrance and may have been shot on the street. Doubled over with blood trickling down his leg and his hand pressed over his bloodied groin, Arnold Rothstein, kingpin of the New York underworld, groped his way through the carpeted hallways of the Park Central Hotel before collapsing in front of the service entrance. Police found him crumpled on the floor, clutching his stomach. A single gunshot wound, blood pooling beneath him. "Who shot you?" the police demanded. According to one account, when asked who had shot him, Rothstein simply put a finger to his lips, choosing silence over cooperation. His enigmatic last words to the police were, "You stick to your trade, I'll stick to mine. Arnold Rothstein, the man who'd betrayed dozens, who'd fixed the World Series, who'd corrupted judges and politicians, kept the gangster's code of silence. He was rushed to Stuyvesant Polyclinic Hospital. On November 6, 1928, he died from his wounds. He was 46 years old. Gambler George "Hump" McManus was arrested for homicide, but later acquitted for lack of evidence. According to Cook, Thompson later told some of his acquaintances that the killer had not been McManus, but his bagman, Hyman Biller, who fled to Cuba shortly afterwards. Another theory? Crime reporter Paul Sands suggests that Dutch Schultz murdered Rothstein in retaliation for the murder of Schultz's friend Joey No by Rothstein's protege Jack Legs, Diamond. The truth? No one knows, and no one ever will. Just one day after Rothstein succumbed to his mortal wound, officers happened upon a couple of shady characters rifling through papers at Rothstein's main office. Rothstein's attorney, William A. Hyman, told reporters, "When Rothstein's safe deposit boxes are opened, there will be a lot of suicides." The files disappeared, the evidence vanished, and Arnold Rothstein's secrets died with him. Arnold Rothstein changed organized crime forever. Before him, gangsters were thugs, smashing windows, robbing stores, beating people in alleys. After him, they were businessmen. Rothstein was widely reputed to have organized corruption in professional athletics, including conspiring to fix the 1919 World Series. He gained notoriety as the person who first realized the lucrative opportunities afforded by prohibition and understood the truths of early 20th century capitalism, giving people what they want, and came to dominate them. He taught Lucky Luciano how to organize crime families. He taught Meyer Lansky how to launder money. He taught Frank Costello how to buy politicians. He created the blueprint for the American Mafia. And his death? His death, and the breakup of Rothstein's New York City-based criminal association, helped pave the way for reformer Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia to take office. 10 years after his passing, Rothstein's once vast fortune had evaporated, declared insolvent by his brother Harry. But his influence lived on. In F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, a minor character named Meyer Wolfsheim is said to have helped in the Black Sox Scandal. In explanatory notes accompanying the novel's 75th anniversary edition, editor Matthew Brucoli describes the character as being based on Arnold Rothstein. In The Godfather Part 2, 1974, the fictional gangster Hyman Roth alludes to the scandal when he says, "I've loved baseball ever since Arnold Rothstein fixed the World Series in 1919. In the HBO series Boardwalk Empire, he was played by Michael Stuhlbarg. Arnold Rothstein's story became legend. The gambler who fixed the World Series, the gangster who mentored the mafia, the businessman who turned crime into an industry. And in the end, he died the way he lived, gambling on one more game, and losing." They called him the Brain, not because he was the smartest, though he was, not because he never lost, though he rarely did, but because he saw what others couldn't. Crime wasn't about muscle, it was about money. It wasn't about fear, it was about corruption. Arnold Rothstein didn't rob banks. He owned them. He didn't kill rivals. He bought judges to convict them. He fixed the World Series, invented organized bootlegging, mentored Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky, and turned the mob from street gangs into corporate empires. But in the end, the thing that made him famous, his gambling, killed him. A 3-day poker game, a $320,000 debt, a refusal to pay. And on November 4th, 1928, in room 349 of the Park Central Hotel, someone put a bullet in his gut. He crawled through the hallways, bleeding, dying. And when the cops asked who shot him, he whispered, "You stick to your trade. I'll stick to mine." The Brain died that night. But his empire, it's still alive. Every mafia boss, every corporate racket, every fixed game, they all trace back to Arnold Rothstein. The man who proved that in America, crime isn't about violence. It's about business. And business is always good. This is